Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studio, it's time for Family Business Radio. Showcasing outstanding family businesses and the advisors who assist them.
Good afternoon. You're listening to an episode of Family Business Radio. I'm your host, Anthony Chen. Today we get to have a bit of a treat, I know, with our theme, Family Business Radio. We seldom get to have a full opportunity to be able to interview two spouses involved in the same business together. So today we get to have a little sneak peek of what it's like, how they got started, how is it like working together, and this is their second rendition of trying to work together. So please, let's welcome here Geoff and Brenda Smith with Assurance Financial. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us, Anthony.
Yeah. So I know with people, when they look at family business, they have this image in their head, like a brick and mortar corner shop. Give us a little insight, like what's your background? Like what got you down to this path of starting your own business? And of course, this is not your first business. So kind of give us wind back the hands of time. What was your first career in business?
So I am a mortgage banker, and we operate the branch for Assurance Financial in downtown Roswell. And not everybody in high school went to their guidance counselor and said, I want to be a mortgage banker, and neither did I. I actually started my career really 30 years ago. I was a business newspaper reporter, and I did that for a few years before getting into construction. And that was my first business venture. I ended up by accident starting a small construction business that kind of grew into something a little bit bigger until we ran into the crash of 2008. Mm-hmm. But got into the mortgage business full time in 2012. And that's a long story, but a friend of mine started a branch with Assurance Financial, started working for him, and he made it look good. 5 years ago, I opened the Assurance Financial branch in Canton Street, which is basically a small business. It's a profit and loss model, P&L model branch. I guess that's how we got into it.
So you mentioned you working in business journalism. Like, what made you shift from business journalism to, I'm going to have a construction business?
I love the journalism. You talk about an interesting job, getting to meet all kinds of great people, and everybody wants to talk to a journalist as long as they're reporting good news. And it was a really fun job. But I had an opportunity, and outside of the business, where someone came to me, and it was a partnership where they were buying houses and needed somebody to help fix up those houses. And so I jumped in as more of a handyman, would fix up the houses. So it was an opportunity that came up. Being a journalist is great. It doesn't pay a lot. Mm-hmm. We were really thinking about children at the time, and so we started the compensation and all that became more and more of a thought process. And the construction business is something that I had been brought into with my father years ago. And so we had that in the background. And so the opportunity presented itself, and it started as a kind of fixing up other people's houses to all of a sudden I started my own business and started getting into remodels and high-end remodels and built some custom homes in 2007. And it grew that way.
Yeah. Now, was this like before or after, I think, was it Mountain Park that you guys had your first home in?
We did. We bought our first, I called it a cabin.
Okay.
In 2001. Brenda, what do you call it?
Or a shack.
Or a shack. Okay.
We were young.
We were young. The property was amazing. And Brenda's real creative. She'll tell you first off that I'm the talker of the two of us, but she is super creative, as we both are. And we saw that house, and we saw the potential. As we didn't really see exactly what it was, but which was beautiful on a half acre with a creek and everything else. But it was an interesting place. Probably built by two people in the 1920s that my guess is built a house in between drinking beer.
Oh, okay. So that was quite a project. So that's where you cut your teeth then in the whole remodeling and construction side of things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We bought that and had a dream of what it could be. And within a couple of years, we had knocked down almost all of it and rebuilt it.
It was fun. Every weekend, this is before children, so every weekend we just couldn't wait to get to Saturday to just start working on that house, whether it was work on the kitchen and then work in the den. Yeah. And before long, like she said, we literally tore down 1/3 of the house, 2/3 of the house, all the way to the foundation and built it right back up again. And it became it was really beautiful. We turned into a beautiful house, right?
We did.
Yeah.
So you guys were like freaking flyers at Home Depot or something like that, right?
Oh, yeah. We were down there a lot. They knew us by name. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So how did you both meet and take us back in time as to how this original partnership started?
It would be at the University of Georgia. We were both employees of the taco stand.
Oh, okay.
Right across from the Arch.
I was the shift manager at the time.
Okay.
And within how long?
Within 2 weeks, I also became a shift manager.
Oh.
He likes to say he was the manager and brought me under his wing. But
Yeah. It's not really true.
I differ.
Yeah. Didn't take a whole lot. You can imagine the employee base there in a college town, but we definitely earned the right to be shift managers. But at any rate, we started dating there. And
Yeah. And I guess we worked together. I didn't even think then. So at the start of our relationship, we worked together.
yeah, there you go.
I mean,
that
if
was
you
our
call
first kind of
that- if you call
partnership.
that work.
Rolling burritos and counting out pinto beans.
So that was the very first family business per se.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For, those Rod Farr up there in it was a great restaurant. It was right in downtown Athens. We met in college and haven't really been apart since. Yeah.
Then from there, then we fast forward to then the construction side of the business. So you decided, I got this opportunity. I'm going to make that leap. How was that conversation like?
In terms of starting the business,
Yeah.
like I'm saying, we started really thinking about finances and we just started looking at different opportunities. I made the decision that I don't know that the newspaper thing is going to be a life. We just planned that out. I don't think it's going to be a lifelong thing. Mm-hmm. Like I'm saying, we had an opportunity with somebody who was somebody I knew through the newspaper industry, and they just bought houses on the side and said, I need somebody to fix these things. We want to buy them up and flip them. That's essentially what he wanted to do. So I was really good I knew where towns were putting money into their downtown to try to create economic development opportunities, which meant sometime down the road, if you bought a house there, that house might be more valuable in the future. Mm-hmm. And so I would tell that person. So anyway, my job was to say, hey, something's going on in downtown Lawrenceville. Mm-hmm. They're putting a lot of money into it. And he would go buy a house in downtown Lawrenceville. And then after I decided there might be a business opportunity there. And I enjoyed construction. It's something that we were doing on the side, as I said, at
With
home.
our own house. So you were already in the business but other people weren't paying you at first.
That's right.
but he was very good at it. So it was an easy jump.
And I had done it before. So I had done, before the newspaper industry, me and my father helped build his retirement home in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Like literally we built it ourselves. And while I was there, I was in the construction industry, just living in Hilton Head before I started my real career. So I'd had a background and so that was the opportunity. We definitely had a lot of discussion about it. We were definitely very young back then as well. Mm-hmm. So we had the whole world in front of us. When you're young and you don't have kids, you got the whole world in front of you. And it's a lot easier to make those kind of decisions than it is, say, a lot later in life, right?
You're not as scared. There's not, that much to risk
yeah.
at that age. You always feel like you can jump back into whatever you were before.
Yeah. So it was a pretty quick conversation, really. I'm sure it felt big at the time, but it was an exciting jump at the time because we thought it was really going to grow into something. And it did, just not how we thought it would.
Mm-hmm. Well, then let's fast forward a little bit more then. So from the construction now into the mortgage side of things. You mentioned your approach on that and then set up a branch here 5 years ago. How was that conversation? Was that any different from the construction side?
That was a little more... I would say from that perspective, we're totally different people. The crash of 2008, it really affected me in a big way. Mm-hmm. When the crash in 2008 happened, the financial crash, I had my construction business. And in 2007, I thought, boy, I've really done something. I'm really a smart guy. Mm-hmm. Like I've done what I'm supposed to do. We've created this business. It's growing every single year. And then when the crash happened, all of a sudden, nobody wanted to build anything. Nobody was doing anything in that industry. And I went from thinking I'd really done things right to all of a sudden we had 2 young boys at the time, a 2-year-old and a brand
newborn.
New. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So slight stress, just a bit.
And I was also at the time in advertising, and they had cut all advertising budgets because I was freelance.
Oh.
So all of a sudden, 2 young kids with no fear, no jobs.
Uh-huh.
So both of us, it was, those were some hard times. Those were 4 years of really trying to just figure out what are we going to do. And we did all kinds of, Brenda was waiting tables at night at the Fickle Pickle in downtown Roswell, just doing whatever we could. She would watch the boys at the time because daycare was expensive. I was out trying to find whatever construction type work I could get my hands on. And then at night she would go wait tables and help back there. And so it was just, and then eventually things fell into place. I ended up with a job in marketing. Brenda ended up, went back and got her teaching certificate and started teaching. and which was great at the time with insurance and everything else. And so at any rate, got into the mortgage business, and you fast forward to the decision to start this new branch. This was after many years of growth and good mentorship from the branch managers, Damien and Jody Zaparanik down in Atlanta, who would run a very good branch for Assurance Financial. It's a great company. And the opportunity we felt was there, that it was time for me I'm an entrepreneurial spirit, and it was time. We knew that was going to be the case. I'd grown my business. It was a much safer decision than maybe it was back in 2001 when we decided to do construction. But yeah, I think she was on board, and she had to be supportive of the whole thing because there was definitely some risk involved. Mm-hmm. I had grown my book of business up, and that was going to help support things, but trying to figure out just exactly, is this going to work? I was in a safe place. I was making income. I didn't have to worry about budgets and all that kind of stuff. Now all of a sudden I'm signing a lease and I'm responsible for all these expenses. I wouldn't have done it without Brenda's support. There's no doubt about that.
And I think I also encouraged you to do it. So I was 100% on board. Like I really thought he could do well with it. Mm-hmm. And so that really helped, I think.
Absolutely.
That we were both, let's do this.
Yeah.
So was there not much convinced? You were actually like, no, let's go for it.
I think I might have even encouraged when you were considering it. I think I.
And I would agree with that. I think she might have probably put the idea in my head. I mean, after 2008, you get put in the position like that. It's just, I got something working right now. I got my head down, and I'm just going to keep producing. And I think it was Brenda that kind of said, let's get your head above water here and take a look. I think you would be a good, I coach sports and I do stuff. So I love coaching people and that kind of thing. She put that bug in my head and said, I think you'd be really good at your own branch. And that's, once I have her support, mm-hmm. that makes that decision a whole lot easier, especially from where we'd come from in 2008.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So she's like your mental coach then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So your perspective on this, what was it that you saw that kind of stood out opportunity wise?
Well, I think it starts with just having a lot of faith in him. Mm. He can sometimes pull out miracles in tough situations, and the potential for making more money for us as a family was better if he was on his own. Yeah, I knew he could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was it. And that was probably about a 1.5-year process of deciding this is what we want to do, and then going to the company and saying, hey, we want to do another branch and start this up in Roswell, and then them saying that sounds okay. And then of course my other folks I was working for, Damien and Jody, being supportive of that was a big deal too, because they were losing a loan officer in order to make this happen. Mm-hmm. And it was just a lot of people being supportive and to make this happen. So it made it work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also is, when you have that many people supporting you, you feel no pressure like that. And so you have no choice but to make it work. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it sounds like it's just really kind of cliche. It takes a whole village to really bring one up in that fashion. As you were having these conversations, whether it was with your mentors or with home office back in New Orleans, with how long you've been with Assurance Financial, did you ever get someone to say, "Oh, we've actually been waiting for this call"?
Yeah, it's funny when I got with my folks, the owner of the company, and I had made this all big presentation, I'd done all this research, like here's all the business that's in Atlanta, and here's how much we're missing, and here's what I think we can do. And I'd made this huge presentation, did a ton of research, and I probably got 5 minutes into my presentation, and they said, Geoff, we know there's enough for another branch in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, that's great. I said, well, I need to explain to you why I'm the guy to do it. And they said, Geoff, we know you're the guy to do it. So it was a pretty quick conversation. Okay. We'd known them. They're great people. Assurance Financial is like a family. Yeah, and it was just a really great place. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I knew I wanted to stay with them. And we did. Yeah.
Wow. So for those of first listening in, as you're hearing about your background story, now dig a little bit more, not too much technical, but more on the mortgage side of things. Because like you mentioned, in the guidance counselor selections of careers, mortgage broker probably not on the top list. Share or break down some kind of myths or stereotypes of what people think mortgage brokers do. Because most people think, oh, I just go to a bank and get a loan from there. But my understanding is you guys are just completely separate from any bank, and you guys are independent.
We are. So Assurance Financial, all we do are home loans. That's it. We don't have, we fund our own loans. So we are like a bank in that way that we do have use our own money to close the loans. But all we do are residential home loans. That's our specialty. And so we work really hard to try and be the best at giving people good customer service. And I think people's perception of loan officers, there's a lot of bad ones out there. And I think when people come to me, a lot of people's perceptions are that there's somebody's it can be a dirty business. And it is. There's a lot of people who play a lot of tricks, show a low rate, and then they don't tell people they're paying a lot of points for that. And then they don't find that out until they get closer to the closing table. And I know because I've had people come to me after having that done to them, and somebody said, well, call this guy. And so you try to help them out. But so you got to overcome that as a loan officer, that sometimes people have that kind of perception. But really what a good loan officer's job is to, number one, go through a good pre-approval process and make sure there's no hurdles between somebody and getting to the closing that they want. And number two, to try to find the really best rate and product that suits that person based on their financial picture. And then number three, make sure they have a very comfortable understanding of all of the processes and costs, not just involved in the loan, but actually buying a house. And there's a lot. So by the time they leave me, they're confident that they're approved and they have a very comfortable understanding of what they're getting into, so they can go have fun shopping for a house. And then once the loan process starts, of course, the magic is that we have a very simple process in terms of getting them through the loan, so they don't feel like we're hitting them up with documents every single day. So a lot of that falls on Brenda. And so part of her job at the office is to take a loan once I've got it turned in and go through the documents and make sure that loan has everything that the underwriter wants to see. So her job is to make sure that underwriter looks at that file and says, wow, this is perfect. And so we get a good underwrite. And so we try to make things very simple. There's 3 times we ask them for documents. One is in the initial, the second is after Brenda reviews it, and the third is usually after underwriting. They might need one thing. And we try to just keep it that simple. And we try to communicate well with them throughout the loan process so that they always know what's going on. And then we try to we make sure that they get to closing on time. And we make sure we hit all the timelines. And if we do our job, I tell everybody we have happy clients at the closing table. And really our team, and this is a total team effort, because my job is to go out and find the business, to establish a relationship with the clients and the referral partners, to make sure we communicate with them throughout the process. And then Brenda's job is really to, behind the scenes, make sure that all the documentation and everything is done in the background so that I don't have to have any weird calls with them or anything. And so they can just think about decorating the home instead of, is the money going to show up? And the proof is in the pudding. I will tell you, I just got back from Baton Rouge, our national sales conference, and I was out of our 95 loan officers nationwide in Assurance Financial, I was number 4 in customer service. So we have a survey that goes out to both agents and to the list and to the buyers and borrowers. And out of our star ratings and our surveys all year long, I was number 4. Should have been number 1, but there was one deal where a guy quit his job week before closing and gave me a bad review, but that's okay. That's not a big deal.
Well, that's something you can control.
No, I know.
Really?
I know,
you couldn't wait a week?
Yeah, if you could just keep your job until closing, that'd be fantastic. Still got him a loan, which is why he got the review, but it wasn't as good of a loan as before. But
The goal has been set for next year.
So next year you're going for the number 1 spot. You just gotta, like, in the interview process, if you're gonna quit your job, just don't do it before closing.
Didn't think I had to include that in my conversation, but now that is a new part of the initial conversation. Please don't buy a new Ferrari, and please keep your job until we close.
Brenda, getting to now really the brains behind the operation. For someone who are listening in, is like, I have never gone through a whole mortgage situation or have ever worked with an Assurance Financial, maybe have some kind of negative experiences. Share with us, what is it like when you get a first call from you? If we were a client, what's that going to sound like?
We try to make the process as fun as it can possibly be, as easy as it can possibly be.
I don't get to hear the word fun on a mortgage application.
Creating relationship with the client, and that starts off with Geoff and continues with me, because it's that they're excited to buy this house. They've got some big event in their life that they're moving, and so it's a big time in their life. And so we're trying to make that process as smooth and easy as possible. So
yeah, we don't want to be, if they're having to think about us the whole time, then we're doing something wrong. right? If we want to be in their hair in the first couple of days and then out of it pretty much for the rest of the loan process.
Yeah.
And she's great with emails. She tries to keep everything nice and clean and simple. And if she knows what she's doing, then she's not asking them, having to re-ask them for documents. And some loan officers, they're asking for documents that people have already sent.
Oh.
It can become, if you don't have a good process in place, then it can look real sloppy behind the scenes. And she does just an amazing job in the background of just being very clean and concise with what she's asking for and getting everything in the file. She's not good at self-promotion. I have to be good as part of my job.
So you're the PR person.
I'm her PR person. She's not going to sit here and tell you how great she is, which I have no problem doing. But yeah.
But I think that is what works for us, as you can see in this interview. I like to keep everything pulled together behind the scenes and shove him out there to do his thing. So he doesn't have to worry about behind the scenes.
That's right.
So how do you both navigate your conversation at the office and at home? Because for a lot of family business, whether it's siblings, cousins, or the parent-child relationship or spousal relationship, there's that fine line of, okay, when is this conversation business and when is this conversation like father to son or spouse to spouse? Like how do you balance that?
I say we try to keep it pretty limited at the office. We will have a scheduled meeting that will take care of business first, and then sometimes that leads into personal stuff. It's usually in the afternoons. We might have a little espresso break, and then we'll sit and maybe discuss some personal stuff then. But I really try to leave him alone and focus on my stuff. We'll even do emails instead of talking to each other at the office sometimes, just so he can get to it when he needs to get to it, or I can get to it when I can get to it, instead of interrupting each other. Because at home, I want the answer right then.
And that's a good point. It's interesting in the office. It's easy when you're married to know this is my wife, and you just when you need something, you just speak up. Whereas if it's we work hard to formulate roles and make sure that when we're at the office, we're handling things in a business fashion. When we get home, because it's important to separate. One thing we didn't want to do was say, "Hey, let's start working together." And then when I come home, I have a business partner instead of a wife and a husband. So we work very hard, and I say work very hard. It is hard work to make sure that you establish those roles and those lines, and they don't really bleed through. We try hard not to talk about work at night. Sometimes it's impossible because being in this job, it can be 24/7 because some people don't do stuff until after work, and I have to be available. But for the most part, we try very hard to be business associates at work, and then husband and wife when we get home. We established this before it started, and I think that helped of having a plan, because we were a little scared of, are we going to get tired of each other? This was a long conversation.
Yeah.
Really a bunch of long conversations.
So,
we had some previous experience. So when I had the construction firm, Brenda was between jobs, and she decided she was going to come. I had my general contractor's business, and we decided, hey, why don't you just work for me? I need help. I'm spending the weekends now doing my finances while I'm out in the field all week. And that lasted about 5 weeks. And we were much younger then, and I think I came home, and it came to an end when I walked in the door, and Brenda told me she was so excited to show me how she had totally rearranged the spreadsheet that I created to manage the finances and the projects. And I'm sure she did a great job looking back on it. But at the time, I'm pretty sure I probably flipped out a little bit. And we just were a lot younger then, and I don't think we were mature enough now. We've raised 2 boys. We've got a boy in college. We've got a sophomore in high school, and we just know each other a lot better.
And we're so busy we can't really focus on a lot of the smaller stuff as we could before. It was just the 2 of us. But now we're so torn.
Yeah.
We've also gotten used to communicating that way, just having 2 teenage boys that do every sport imaginable 24/7. So that's how we have to communicate at home too, of being real organized like that. So that helped us.
But there definitely has been some times in the office where I'll be in the middle of something and she'll want an answer, and she'll just ask me right out of the blue, and vice versa, right? Where I may not have done that if it was somebody else. But so we do work hard to try to establish those roles. It's not easy, but it's also challenges are one thing, but the benefits far outweigh any challenges. And the benefits are I've got somebody working now at my office. Nobody's going to have a bigger vested interest in the success of that office than her. Nobody's going to care as much. And it helps that Brenda's incredibly competent, very well organized, and just does a lot of things really well that fits the role that she's taken on at the office. It's the benefits are huge, but you have to realize that it's going to be work, and you have to know what that work is so that you can have a successful working relationship and so you can maintain a successful marriage when you get home.
So something for those that are listening in, getting back to the whole theme of family business, you've already had this one try once, what not to do, and same mistake. And it sounds like you, as you shared, had a lot of in-depth conversation, what it's going to look like, scenario, or at least drawing lines or boundaries, if that's a proper word, or a system in place before really both of you diving head first into this. Is that about gist of it in terms of if you were to recommend another spouse, or rather spousal couple, where they're thinking about doing a family business for themselves and they're scratching their head thinking, we've never done it before. Like, where do we start, or how do we start? What would be like your go-to, like top 3 things that you would recommend them to do?
What do you think, B?
I would definitely say discuss how you're going to communicate. Home stuff and business stuff.
So set boundaries on communication, right? Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. What do you think the next one?
I think don't be so rigid either with your rules. So set rules, but don't be so rigid with the rules. Okay.
It still should be fun.
Yeah, exactly. The other side of it is you've got your spouse and your best friend in life. They're working with you. It's a great way to live a life. It really is. And so yes, set boundaries, but also don't be so rigid on those boundaries, and try to keep work, and try to keep home life. I think if those are 3 things, those would be the top 3 things. And we don't just jump into it. Know that there are challenges. Respect the marriage. Marriage is the most important thing, right? That is your home life and your marriage is always the most important thing. And you want to make sure that nothing messes with the sanctity of that. And when we went into this time, I took a lot of couples out who had businesses together. There were a lot of people that we went and asked advice for. What are and the number one thing we got back from everybody is set boundaries. Set boundaries on communication. And when you get home, try to not talk about work.
And define roles.
Yeah.
I have different goals within the business than he does. And so that helps.
Yeah. We're not just willy-nilly, just everybody's doing stuff. We know exactly what Brenda's role is and what she's supposed to be doing, and exactly what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. It's all very well spelled out so that there's no overlap, and that makes things fairly simple.
Fairly.
Yeah. So also in kind of the interim, you mentioned you're raising 2 boys.
Yes.
How are you all juggling family business, working together, and having 2 rambunctious teenage boys all at the same time?
They're starting to get older. So it's really us been also looking at the next phase of life. We have one in college, and then we have a sophomore. So that in high school. So that kind of also led us to want to work together again.
It would have been a lot harder to do this if they were a lot younger, to be honest.
Yeah.
Our high school, he's driving. He's got a car, which means we only see him as much as he lets us. Okay.
So this is the first time since we had them that we're starting to have more time together. So it's been an interesting phase. And it's also, so now we can really focus on this adventure that we're going on together in the business world.
Yeah, I think she put it perfectly.
So now with this kind of additional time, is it all going to be, already had a conversation of having more of that you time or free time in this journey in the business world, or have you already had kind of other thoughts in place to replace that with maybe more home renovations, going back to what you were doing when you were younger?
That's a great question, and that is a life conversation we're just really entering into consciously. Like, what is this life going to be like? We got one kid's out, and the other kid's got one foot out the door, and raising children, you know what it's like. You're knee deep in your first one.
I'm like
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten to the starting line. I'm at geez 10 months. So me compared to everyone else that's listening in and you, I haven't even gotten started.
Yeah, you're knee deep in it. We all know what that first year can be like, and they're never on autopilot by any stretch of the imagination. But we're not having to, you go through all those phases, and really for 18 years, it's all about the boys and raising the boys. And this is our one shot to try to do what we can to help raise them correctly. And you're just doing everything you can. Okay, so-and-so's got, and they're very active boys too. So we got, okay, what are our schedules? Our schedules were insane for years. We got, one's going to baseball, one's going to wrestling, one's going to this, and we got to go to that. Then what's happening this weekend? Okay, you go to Samuel's baseball tournament. I'll go to Charlie's baseball tournament.
I always called it like football plays. We had a chalkboard of like who's going where at what point.
And then there's no boundaries or whatever rules. You just feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants trying to do the best job. And then all of a sudden they're like grown. And now it's, hey, I'm Geoff Smith. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And so we're definitely finding like free weekends, and I guess Anthony's right, though. We are back to, it seems if you judge us on our last 2 months of weekends, we're back to doing projects on the house again.
We are, yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you this about Brenda. She leveled our entire yard over the past, had 4 tons of dirt dropped off in the backyard.
6
tons of dirt. She spread it out in a wheelbarrow and then laid sod down. So if you want to know how hard of a worker she is, I would have helped her, but I was working on the other project she put me on, which was building a privacy shed. So yeah, we've been pretty busy.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Okay, I guess that's your free time then. That's your pet project. Okay. Yeah. So then circling back, so getting to the very start of your story, let's start with the construction side. Was there a project that you completed that made you think, yeah, I made the right choice. I'm in the right business?
Going back to construction?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was one house, and Brenda did some stuff with me. I don't think you forgot, but
Brenda did some design work.
Yeah, she was my designer, so I would hire her. So Brenda's got an art education degree, and so she would do preliminary design work for some of my projects. And we did one where we completely designed the first story of someone's house, took down walls and just redid floors, the entire kitchen, and it was really the biggest project I had done, I guess, at that time. And just, that was a lot of fun. It was successful financially for sure, but it was also just fun to do a job so well that the people were just so very happy at the end. And you can see how you made a big impact and a big difference in their life, and through construction, and we managed it well. And I thought, wow, this is something that could really grow into something bigger. So it was a one successful project, one successful job where everything fell into place, and they were great clients, and it just gave you just wanted that feeling over and over and over again.
Then let's fast forward now to the mortgage side of things. As you were getting into that mortgage industry, was there a particular case from then to now that kind of made you stand out? Yeah, I am in the right spot, or something that was like a Hail Mary that you came through for?
Yeah, it's funny. So you elevate. There's a lot of different milestones, right? And the first was getting my first $1 million month, which in the industry, there's a lot of things based on numbers. You try to hit these milestones and everything. And then it became, okay, when am I going to get a $2 million month? And then it was, so last year, 2 years ago, I'd gotten to a point where I was like, I need to figure out I need some new motivation here, right? I've grown the business. It's not just about the numbers. And so I started thinking, you know what I'm going to do this year in 2023, the beginning of 2023, I am going to make every closing like I'm going to find something amazing to talk about or something amazing to do with the client. I want to make it, I want to do something at the closing. And as soon as I said that, I went to the closing, and it was a first-time home buyer. And usually I'm down there making small talk with the agents because I want to make sure that we're having a good conversation. But I looked over because I was being aware, and my borrower, she was a first-time home buyer, and her hand was shaking as she was signing the documents. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's been dreaming of this moment since she was a little girl. She's getting her first house. And here we are down here making small talk and like almost not even noticing. And so I started talking about me and Brenda's first cabin. And then the agent started talking about their first house, and everybody was talking, and then tears were coming out, and it just became this emotional. And it's like when you buy a car and you never saw the car before, now you see it everywhere. So it was like, then the next closing, A month later, I had a closing where we had to move the closing up 2 weeks because the borrower was pregnant and they moved her due date up 2 weeks.
Oh.
And so that closing was supposed to be at 2 p.m. She calls me at 9 a.m. in the morning and says, "Hey, Geoff, I just went into labor. Is there any way we can move this closing up?"
And that's after already.
She still wanted to close. I'm like, okay, yeah. I said, absolutely. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm trying to create amazing closings. Like, it doesn't get any more amazing than this. So I'm like, how quickly can you be to the office? She said, my Waze says I can be there in 27 minutes. I said, start heading that way. I'll get it all set up. So luckily the closing attorney was a real sport, great guy. And Alpharetta, I called him up. I said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. Our 2:00 just went into labor and she's on her way there." And he was like, "Are you serious?" So he was as excited as I was. So I called our agent, Kanani, and I said, "Hey, I said, get dressed. We got to get to the closing. She's in labor." So we met her there. We helped her out of the car. Her husband dropped her off. The attorney was waiting with like his 2 assistants. It was like she was coming into a 5-star hotel, and they had all the documents out. She signed it, took the picture with the key. And the next day, me and Kanani got a picture of the new baby. It was like incredible. It was like that moment more than anything else is like what just makes this job exciting.
And that was a situation where it was fun working as a couple with them, being a couple, because I also became very close to them because we were just all so excited for them. And so they were texting me pictures too. And so it was just like our family and it was just an intimate relationship that it was fun to have.
Yeah. When you've gone through raising boys and everything, and you get to see a couple like that who's buying their first home and they've got a first child and they're going through all these things that, that we look back on fondly. It's like we want to be a part of it, and we want to make it as amazing as possible. Our first experience buying a house was not all that amazing, really. Oh. Yeah, we had an experience where we had a lender who we got to the closing, and the interest rate was half a point higher than what we had talked about, and then the lender was nowhere to be found. This was in 2001, so people are getting away with all kinds of stuff.
Before regulations, yeah. And
we were youngsters wanting to buy that cabin, and everybody was just staring at us trying to, are you going to buy the house or not? That was a kind of a miserable experience in that regard. Yeah. And so we just want to make sure that everybody has an amazing experience. And they do, and they talk about their closing. She's in labor at the closing table, and all the documents, the whole office at the attorney's office got her set up. So it was really great. Those kind of things are fun.
I don't know if there's anything else that could stop that. Delivering the keys and the baby. Wow.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're trying to see what we can do for the next big show. Yeah, next encore.
So that was your mission for, was it 2023? So what is the mission for 2025?
So we're trying to hire. So rates went up in 2023, and that made things pretty tough. Mm-hmm. And we put a hiring freeze on just to weather the storm. Our market shrunk completely. Home buying shrunk, but there were a ton of loan officers still left over from the low interest rates of before that. And so the market was really inflated. And so we put a hiring freeze, and the job was to keep the branch going and grow business. And we did. We set up some great foundations, had some big successes last year. And so this year we want to hire. So we're looking for loan officers, and we want to bring some people into the office and just really start growing our branch. That was the intent in the beginning. Once rates went up, that kind of put a halt on that. Mm-hmm. So it changed the business plan. The business plan then was, all right, Geoff, you need to keep producing as much as possible and create some relationships. And now we made some good relationships with a couple different real estate firms, and we've got some great opportunities, and I'm interviewing some folks right now. And so hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a couple new loan officers that can come in and help doing all those same things with their clients.
Mm. Now, you shared halfway through where you talked about for your business, there's kind of some milestones, whether it's $1 million or $2 million months, and then getting that experience of first-time home buyers. What's something else in terms of, I'm not as familiar with the mortgage industry, but what other high watermarks are there that you haven't really tapped into? Doesn't have to be numbers, but something that you hear from other veteran mortgage brokers where they go, oh yeah, this is when I knew I've hit peak.
I think it's the hiring more people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, from a personal standpoint, I had a good year last year, got some awards at our conference, including the customer service award, and was number 2 in volume for the company. And so that was a good year, but I think it's now trying to grow the office and trying to get more people and hire more people and start coaching other loan officers up and helping them be successful. Mm-hmm. So I think the high watermark from that perspective, for me, the high watermark is getting 2 successful loan officers in place at Assurance Financial's Roswell branch. That's going to be the high watermark this year. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you have other plans?
No.
Yeah.
Other than 6 tons of dirt
Yes.
in the bag for a project.
More loans pay for more dirt in the Smith's backyard.
I think we're both focused on growing the business and making it more successful.
Yeah, I have numbers that we want to hit this year for sure. I want to get that number 1 customer service rating this year as well. I've got my sights set on it. I know who beat me. And
so whoever's listening, oh man, I got Geoff breathing down on my neck right now.
I'm breathing hard. Yeah, we're coming after him. So we want to get that number 1 in customer service rating. That's going to be a big deal. We want to remain top 10 in the company this year at the end of this year, and that's a big deal for Assurance Financial. And we want to get 2 successful loan officers in place by the end of the year. And successful loan officers is a hard thing to do. It's not an easy job. But if anybody knows anybody out there that is motivated, has energy, and is highly ethical, we would love to meet that person.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. And for our listeners that are just on the edge where like, oh, this is what's going to look like in terms of creating a family business, some boundaries or at least some tips on getting started. And if they're interested, if they're in the Roswell or North Fulton, Georgia area that is interested in going into mortgage world, how can our listeners best find you?
They can find us online. You can find us online at assurancemortgage.com and look up for the Roswell branch. You can call me always at 678-779-5066. And you can always email me at gsmith, that's G as in Georgia Smith, at assurancemortgage.com. And that's assurance, A, S as in Sam, S as in Sam, U-R-A-N as in Nancy, C-E, mortgage.com. Or just pop in the office. We are on the north end of Canton Street. And we're there all the time. We have people pop in all the time for an espresso. There's a couple agents that know I've got it in the back, and when they're out in the field, they pop in. And then usually we can find us at the North End Tavern for happy hour on Friday at the end of a nice work week. Find me and Brenda sitting at our corner 2 seats down there.
So this is your assigned regular seat there, your water hole.
That is on Fridays. Now that we don't have the boys to get home to, we walk right out of the office and walk right over and it's a nice way to end a week.
So as we're closing down the show, what I like to have is a universal question to bring or close out the show with our guests here. So with the theme of family businesses, being able to find ways to work together and having a winding path of a journey to get through. For our listeners that's been on the fence and hearing, okay, I hear what you're saying. I need to set boundaries or having some kind of communication thing, but there's always that but on the other side. Like, how do we know we're doing it right, or how do we know if we're doing it wrong? So you just think about it. Of course, I'm going to get right into my legalese section of the show, but to giving you time, the question is, for those that are on the fence, they're on that journey. You've gone through that journey twice over, but for those that are just new, whether they're just starting out a career, get behind you home, or business, they're having that dining table conversation. How do we know we're doing it right, or if we're doing it wrong? So I'll bring you right back now. Of course, for our listeners that are regulars, this is, of course, the compliance legalese version of the show. You can fast forward this if you like. This show is sponsored by yours truly, Anthony Chen with Lighthouse Financial Network. Securities and advisory services offered through Osaic member FINRA SIPC. Osaic is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic. Our main office address is up in 575 Broad Hollow Road, up in Millville, New York, 11747. You can reach me via email, just my full name, Anthony Chen, CHEN at LFNLC.com, or you can just look me up on LinkedIn. Just type in my full name, Anthony Chen, and you've got like a pixelated Lighthouse Financial background picture in the back with a guy with glasses. You got the right guy. So bringing our guests back in again, the question is, for those who are having that dining room hard conversation, the question is going to be like, how do we know we're doing it right or doing it wrong? What is your
What do you got, B?
I think if you're doing it right, if you have similar goals, you have a goal that you want to achieve together, and if you believe in each other. So I think if you start with those two, then you're off on a good start.
All right.
Absolutely, yeah. I think she put it pretty well. I would just say, just be conscious about that fact that you are working with your spouse, and there are boundaries and things that you're going to need to talk about. A lot of people don't just that I know. Just surprisingly, they don't talk about that stuff. They just jump into it, and so. But I would say, yeah, as long as the business is successful and you're happy on the weekends, and you're doing something right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It's been a pleasure to be on the show. Appreciate you letting us be here.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you all for your insights. Now I was closing out the show as kind of our regular listeners segment called Anthony's Financial Take, as you all hear of setting boundaries, having communication in the family business being the key hallmark of being able to have a successful or a little contentious working relationship. Not so much different in the financial world, especially as I'm working with families. The conversation or tension sometimes comes around, especially with money subject matters coming to mind. The biggest question isn't so much of what is the dollar amount, what is not just only the monthly budget, or what does the retirement number look like, but more so of what is happiness for us as a couple. And for our listeners that are common with coming into the show, is my question revolves around a lot of purpose and kind of drawing back to the origin of the story. What got us together? And let's not forget that, so that when we do chart a course, whether it's for retirement planning or succession planning for the family business, we can always go back to that North Star. And that's a little bit closing out from Anthony here. Thank you for listening in to Family Business Radio.